Are you ready
Yes, I am ready.
for the tea? I need the tea spilled on some stuff.
Oh my God. Oh, what are you gonna ask?
No. No, first off, thank you for coming on and
Absolutely.
being a part of my favorite show. And yeah, I really appreciate it. First off, I kind of like to start with like how you are like growing up and like what was like your biggest inspiration or favorite media or something that stuck with you when you grew up or something like that.
That's a
Yeah.
great question. Yeah, I think the thing that got me into TV, the show that I obsessed over when I was younger was Lost. I mean, that
Oh
was
shit.
the game changer for me. I mean, I loved a lot of TV before that. Weirdly, when I was really probably way too young for it, I liked Dawson's Creek. I don't know why. I thought it
Oh,
was really good drama. I liked a lot of stuff on the WB at the time, like Buffy the
uh,
Vampire Slayer. I was really into that as a kid. But Lost really just opened the world of television to me in a different way. It just showed me how deep you could go with certain characters, the genre and like elevated just drama could coexist. And that's really, and then in high school too, like Grey's Anatomy, I mean, Shonda Rhimes is a huge influence as well, just kind of in that same vein of just like character forward,
uh,
very soapy, very fun, and very aware of that. And I think that kind of self awareness is in a lot of her shows, and has since become part of the brand. But yeah, I would say Lost, Grey's Anatomy, anything else? I mean, Buffy. Yeah, I think those three are a pretty good rep of like my taste and what brought me into the world of TV.
I still need to get on the Lost train. I haven't never
You
seen
haven't
it
seen any of it?
yet. No.
Niles, I think you and I probably have similar TV tastes just based on the tweets I remember you tweeting when I still
Oh
had
yeah.
Twitter. I think Lost is right up your alley.
Oh shit.
Do
I
you
don't.
not? Are you not like genre?
I think, or yeah, I think I always have seen people talk about it and still like, but I don't know. I've never started. It's like one of those things where I put it
Like,
off and put it off, and then I finally watch it, and I'm like hating myself for waiting 5 years to, or yeah.
is the tea nobody in the world cares about, but I haven't seen an episode of Friends, so I totally. There are shows like that that I wait. You
Oh,
just said you haven't seen Lost. They're just
well,
shows. I'm like,
yeah.
I'll get to it, and I have not gotten to it.
I haven't seen every episode of Friends, but just a couple here and there's
Okay.
all I need. Oh man. And then when did like writing become like a part of like a hobby or in school or anything?
Yeah, I think for me, I was in drama. I mean, through middle school and high school, I was in theater. I loved acting. I didn't really think about writing until college. And I don't know. There was just I was still around all the theater kids. Maybe that's what it was. I was hanging around them so much. I wrote plays and like would just direct things with people in them. And then eventually, and I knew I wanted to be in the industry, but I think for a long time I was like, I'll be an actor. And then that pivoted to like directory, but then even that changed to more of like I just like the dialogue. I like writing. I like the scenes. And I started reading a bunch of scripts in college, and that I think really just put me on the like, oh, seeing how everything worked. I mean, I'm a big student of like what we do, and I read a script a week if I can and just study things. So like that's kind of what my brain likes to do anyway. Um, and then yeah, and I loved watching all of it. So I think that too was just like seeing how good the writing and something like Lost was or Buffy, which is very writing forward. Really pushed me to think about myself in that way. And I mean, I went to USC, which is a great space to be figuring out in the creative space what you want to do. I don't know if that answers your question. Does that answer your
Oh
question?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, of course. What are some of your favorite scripts you've read? Like
Oof. TV or
or
film? Do you not care?
either, yeah, like either or, yeah.
In terms of the writing of the script themselves, not necessarily the quality of the final product. Um, like Michael Clayton is maybe one of the best written scripts I've ever read in my life.
Huh.
If you're thinking at all about being a writer, I highly recommend it. Um,
Try.
are
I
you
tr
trying?
I mean, I have or just kind of like a spin-off sort of thing, but I haven't come up with my own idea yet. But
Wait, How to
or
Get Away with Murder?
yeah,
Can we talk about this? Is this like a
Yeah.
thing we're allowed to talk about? I want to know about this. What is this? What's this
Okay,
about?
so it's kind of like a Better Call Saul sort of style, but with Tegan in Mexico City, and she's just getting there with Jorge, and it will be like the first season will be Laurel getting kidnapped and how Tegan helped Jorge get Laurel back. And then we're
Whoa.
gonna sprinkle in some characters like Dominic or something, like how Better Call Saul did, like just characters that'll make
Bro,
sense.
this
Like
is really good.
I know, like Sandrine and how Jorge put her away or for her mental health and how Laurel talked about that. And Laurel will be like 14, I think, is when she gets kidnapped. And I have a whole pin board of like a whole like
Giles. Here's what I'll say, and I
and
don't
the
know if I'm
play
allowed to say. I think I'm allowed to say this. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but I
no.
don't think the show's over. I think there was, and I could be wrong, so please do not put me in like writing. I guess I'm on a podcast, but I think there was an
Uh,
attempt to think about a vehicle for
oh,
Tegan,
shit.
possibly even Michaela in that, but this is all post show, take place after the events of
Ah,
How to Get Away with Murder. But your idea to me is smarter because it goes backwards
mm-hmm.
and you don't have to, I don't know. There's just something in that
Yeah,
exactly that
because
puzzle space, exploring the backstory that's already been laid out and like really fleshing it out. I think that's really smart. And if I were like really evil, I'd steal it and be like, this is what I just came up with. But no, I
just
think that's so, so, so good.
fly me out, fly me out. And like
I'm gonna have to talk to some of the former writers about this and see
yeah,
if anyone's like,
let's start
let's do it.
we
That'd
can
be
start our
crazy.
own firm sort of idea. Like and like in season 6 there's like a whole bunch of Tegan stuff sprinkled, like her whole family in the plane crash and Cora, and I have a
A lot
whole
there.
I'll send you a picture of my pinboard.
Yeah, this is
Ah.
really, really smart. I would watch the hell out of that show.
And then it could end with Tegan going to Kaplan Gold, and then where we pick up in season
I
4
mean, a
with
finale like that, our series finale, you absolutely wanted to end with
Period.
her meeting Annalise, and
Yeah.
that's exactly where we are. Because you
Or
want
just
Viola.
like just walking into Cap, or yeah, like we know where she's headed. Yeah.
That's great.
Uh,
That's really, really, really great. I just want to talk about that now for like the next hour. It's just so good.
great. And I don't have like all the like maybe Jorge could take down Tegan's plane, the family. I don't know, to control her. I don't know, just a little.
I have to say, I mean, you'll have to remind me of some stuff, to be honest. You probably know this show better than I do, or most of anyone who even worked on it. Um, and also it's been a few years and you're rewatching
uh,
it. You do have that advantage, but
I can't
hmm,
believe it's been a few years already.
it feels like last year that we were all in the
Yeah,
right room finishing, and then fast, it just, yeah, all that time disappeared.
yeah, I remember crying and laying on the floor after it ended. But 3 years. Oh my god. Oh man, where were we at before? Um, scripts. Yeah.
Scripts, writing, how I got into the,
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Okay, before we talk about more How to Get Away with Murder, I really am curious about Saint X on Hulu. I saw you tweet or Instagram a couple pictures, and then I kind of Google. It's like based on a book, right? About
yes,
the
yes.
island, and is there any, or can you like not like, or can you like
Talk
re-
just a little bit about it.
yeah, like the synopsis or like the yeah.
Absolutely. So Saint X is going to be on Hulu April 26th.
Okay.
It is based on a novel by Alexa Shaitkin, which is a kind of psychological thriller about a young girl, part of a family, who's vacationing on an island in the Caribbean, anonymous island, Saint X,
Okay.
and goes missing, and 3 days later is found dead.
Mm,
And all eyes turn to two young men, two young black men who work at the resort.
mm,
And then you jump 20 years into the future when one of those men is now living in Brooklyn.
oh,
And you jump
shit.
20 years into the past and watch those young men grow up as children.
Oh
And
shit.
you jump also into the future to jump with the little sister of the young woman who was killed. And it's a very shattered timeline, is moving through at least 40 years of time, different places like Brooklyn and the Caribbean, and also just different character point of views on like what exactly happened on this island and
Oh,
who was
yeah.
involved in this young woman's death. It's a great thriller. I think it has a lot in common with things like White Lotus or Gone Girl.
Oh,
Um,
God.
just very psychological and hopefully satisfying and dramatic at the very end. But it's something I was
I'm
very
ready.
beyond it, like so proud and happy to have worked on. It was like the dream of my life to get to work on that show. And I'm very excited for it to come out in April.
April. How many episodes can you say?
Eight
Or
episodes.
eight? Nice. Oh, shit. All at once, or is it like a weekly sort
The first three will be released April 26th, and
of
then
shit?
weekly after that.
Oh, hell yeah. Okay. I'm
If
ready.
you're a fan of
That
murder
sounds good.
mysteries, I think
Yeah.
you'll like it.
Damn. 20 years, 20 flash forward. Oh, damn.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, How to Get Away with Murder was a great like school in learning how to
Right.
tell stories with fractured timelines. So this was just that on.
Oh, couple months to year. Yeah. What the heck? And then a couple other of your writing credits with Love and then In the Vault. I was wondering if you could talk about with Love and because Rome is on that was on that show and
Yeah.
if it was like writing from Gabriel to his character or anything like that.
That's a really funny question because of the story behind it. But yeah, writing with Love came along right after How to Get Away with Murder. It's obviously not what I was used to writing. I was very into the thrillery thing, and this was a romantic comedy. But it really opened my brain to get to writing just from a different place of like, oh, this is all about characters and relationships and not about dead bodies.
Darn.
But it was interesting because we wrote the character Santiago in the show, and there was a lot of discussion even as we were developing him because we knew we wanted the character to be Afro-Cuban of like who can play this role. And then
Uh,
because I had a good relationship with Rome from How to Get With Murder, it's like,
uh,
well, Rome is Afro-Cuban, and he's also a terrific actor, which both things together, that's perfect. But I wasn't sure that he wanted to do comedy. So my boss at that time, Gloria Calderon-Kellett, kind of did the thing that bosses do and talked to him. And he was so interested. And honestly, like the first day on set, I got to be there for his stuff.
uh,
Um, it was so fun to see him. And he's like, oh my God, like I was like, you're just gonna follow me from every show I go on at this point. I actually tried to get him into St. Max too because
oh
I
shit.
thought he would be so good. But it was really fun to see him get to stretch his acting muscles a little bit and play
Mm.
some much lighter, much more charisma forward. He's dancing with his dad, and like there's just sweeter. That was a good word. Like, and I think he really had a good time, and it was fun to see just a different side of him that wasn't so like self-hating and dramatic. And I liked it. It was
He
a lot of
wasn't he wasn't dancing with his dad on How to Get Away with Murder for sure.
fun. No, he was not.
Darn it. Oh yeah,
He
that's
probably would have taken that opportunity too, because all he could think about was
Daddy,
Sam.
Dad, Sam. Oh God. Yeah, that's great. Like completely different sides of like genres for those two. So that's cool that
Yeah,
you
it
got
was a
to
lot of fun.
do that. Yeah. And then In the Vault was kind of like your first sort of job,
Yeah,
kind of,
so
or
In the
big.
Vault was on a streaming service called Go 90. My boss at the time was oh my God, why am I blanking on his name? Ben Epstein, who is one of the most terrific human beings you'll ever meet if you ever get the chance to meet him. But he's a great showrunner, and that was a staff writer for. It was a very small, like half-hour thriller, 8 episodes about a murder on a college
Oh my.
campus. I have like clearly have a theme going on.
Right.
Um, but it was great. It was a lot of fun. It was four people in the room. And the episodes all ended up on the Roku channel or Tubi or something in that one of
One of
those
those.
kind
Yeah.
of more less prominent, I guess, streamers. But there's a season two. It wasn't a part of season two, but that's
Oh,
coming out on one of those streamers. So if you like that kind of stuff, that might be, I'll have to figure out where it is. But yeah, it was great. I love that show. It's really a lot of fun to write for. And again, I mean, that was the first thing I had ever really done. So it was like a thrill to be in that room.
mm.
And the same thing with How to Get Away with Murder. I mean, I literally went from writing in coffee shops to sitting at Viola Davis's feet, having her hand the script to me and be like, "You need to rewrite the scene." I'm like, "Okay, I have 10 minutes to do that." I'm like,
Oh,
the dream, but I'll never get to do that again. And like that was like the height of it, like joy for me.
Oh, what do you have any? Do you remember any scenes that she or that she would say that for? Or
So you just like specific moments in the show? Yeah,
yeah.
I do actually. I think
Oh,
it's in 604, I believe.
I hate
I
the
Hate the
world. Yeah,
World.
yeah.
I believe the monologue she gives to the young man who's disabled when she talks about being
Oh, yeah.
a skin black woman was a very, very, very different monologue. And the day of shooting, we're doing rehearsal, and Viola kind of says, "This isn't tracking for me. I think I would say something different." And what she said to me was like, I'm a dark skinned black woman. She goes, I get treated differently. And I was like, okay. So we had about 15 minutes before the setup was done. We had to start shooting. And just taking that, what she gave me, I rewrote the monologue, went to her trailer, shaking, of course, even though I had worked with her at this point for 3 years,
Right.
handed it to her. And she's getting her hair and makeup done. And she reads it, puts it down, and just goes, good job.
Oh,
And that was it. And it was just, but I'm like melting too. Like, it's just like, gosh, she just said good job. Like, it
you.
was but I look at that
Right.
and
Oh,
I'm just so proud, not just of the writing, because like that's fun, but like that I was able to do that like that quickly, that amount of time, and then get an approval of someone who, here's the thing. Viola Davis is like brilliant, not just because of what she's doing on screen, but because she can look at a script and say, this is good, but I think there's another emotional angle to get into, or I think this is actually a deeper level that my character might be feeling it on. And I think as a writer, it's easy to get frustrated by actors with opinions like that because
mm,
it's like, well, I'm doing my job, you do your job. However, when you get an actor like her, who I believe just knows this craft maybe better than anyone I've worked with, those moments are so beautiful because she's offering an opportunity to like really mine that character for something
mm,
more authentic and more moving and meaningful. And every single time that this happened on set, the scene became infinitely better. And
damn.
anytime you felt like chills when she gave a monologue or a speech, I guarantee you it's because she gave a note and it was rewritten for her. I
Oh,
guarantee you. Because that is just how well she knew Annalise. And that's just how brilliant of a character and storyteller I think she is.
damn. That gives me chill. Oh shit. Ah. And for the final season too, she said we need to get. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oof.
Well, and I remember I was out on set for this. Sarah Thompson was on set for this, but final
Oh.
season premiere, when she's hitting the pillow,
Mm-hmm. Oh shit.
on the page, there was like much fewer things that she was actually supposed to
Oh
say.
yeah, I have that script. Yeah, I read
And
that.
she added a
Yeah.
few. And I think like You're Not Ugly was one of like that. There are things like that that are just like they gut you, but then you're like, but that is just an actor who's thinking so deeply about the character and where the pain of that character really comes from and like can locate it. And to me, that's a skill that you can't teach. It's a skill that I have not seen in many actors. Um, and it just made my experience on that show like much more rewarding.
I like that scene too because she kind of says some of the things that Sam called her in 109, like when he finally like you're a disgusting slut and like stuff like that.
Yes.
Like she like brought some of that back and
Yeah.
oh my god, what did you like run back to your trail after she said good job to you, or what did you like
Oh, I
dance
ran back to
or
set and immediately grabbed the script supervisor who's always there at Video Village. Her name is Susie. And I was just like, oh my God, you have no idea what just happened.
oh
It's
shit.
like won an Academy Award for writing because Viola Davis said it was good.
Here.
But and not this
Uh,
isn't even like a brag, but like because I worked with her for 3 years, like that happened multiple times. And it was each time it's so satisfying, not just because, oh, it's Viola Davis, but because it's like this is an artist I really respect. And now I see how well they work. So getting that approval also to me means the scene's going to be better, which means an audience member like you is going to like it more. And if my name's on a scene like that, that's just like that feels good. That like I did
right.
something or helped contribute to something that was very entertaining for someone.
Period. Period. Damn, I could not even imagine. Mm-mm. And then season 4, you joined the writers' room, and I was wondering if you could talk about like how like the job came about and like
Oh,
the first
totally.
first day, like for season 4, and like how the
Sure. I
seasons
will
like.
give you all the deets that I can remember of that time. So I remember when I got the call about the interview for the job, I was at the gym. And I had been working in coffee shops and stuff since the job at in the
In the
vault
vault.
and didn't know, anyways, how to break in or anything. But I had sent a script around to my agents and they called me and were like, "Hey, so we know you like the show How to Go with Murder." I was like, "Yeah, I love it." And they're like, "Would you want to write for it?" I'm like, "Is that
Oh
even a
shit.
question?" Yes, let's do it. And like, well, the showrunner has read you and he loved your sample and he wants to meet with you. I was like, great. This is on a Monday, I think. So when does he want to meet? Wednesday. Good, awesome, done. I go and meet Pete on Wednesday. We have about an hour and a half conversation. And this is my first or second, I guess, but officially first because I was technically a writer's assistant on the first show and then graduated to a staff writer on In the Vault. So according to the WGA, I was still a staff writer. So this is like my first official show. And I was very nervous, like drove on to the Sunset Gower lot. I met Pete in an office and he was very nice. We talked a lot about my background, kind of where I'm from, talked about his background. We're both like third children. We had things in common. Um, we also talked about the show, obviously, and what I loved about it. And I was able to talk about things like how, obviously, with Annalise, the depth of the character they gave her, how complex she
Mm-hmm.
is. And he talked a lot about his ideas for season 4, which is that he wanted to put Annalise into therapy. That was a big thing. And he goes, and I kind of want to he's like, maybe we'll pull all the characters into therapy. I don't know, like what character would be interesting to see in therapy.
All of
And I kind of
them.
pitched, well, like, what about Connor? Connor has a lot of anger and a lot of self hatred. I'd love to unpack and see where a lot of that comes from. And he really responded to that. So there were things in the conversation that I felt like were going well. And then he's like, I don't know if I'll have the money to hire somebody. We just wanted to meet you, loved your script. Great, we'll talk later. That was the end of that. And on Thursday, the next day, I got a call that Betsy Beers and Allison Eagle wanted to meet with me
Mm-hmm.
at Shondaland. So that was the next day, Friday. I met with them.
Oh my god.
And that was a great meeting as well. They were really lovely, very cordial. It went really, really easily. I had a great time just conversing with them and convincing them I'm not a psychopath. Because I always say, especially if you want to be a writer, if you ever get meetings with showrunners or at the studio level or executives or whatever for a specific show, you have to know that by the time you get them meeting, they already like you as a writer. They like your writing, and that's what they know about you. What they're measuring at that meeting next is if you're a showrunner, can I spend 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, maybe for multiple years
Oh
in a
shit.
room with this person and not want to kill them?
Uh,
And like that's really what you're trying to feel out. Do we like each other? And I think so going into that meeting, it's all about personality. It's not as much about like, here's my writing style. But that meeting was very fun. And then that Friday evening, I got a call from my agents who were like, you start on Monday.
oh
I was like,
shit.
oh my God, this is crazy. And I remember that call very specifically because when they told me that, I just started laughing. And I just like kept laughing for several minutes because I just couldn't believe it. So I binged watched the show again over that weekend. I had been familiar, but I wanted to be super familiar. I listened to every podcast I could possibly find. I read every article I could find just to get myself ready because I was so, so, so scared. I got the email from the writers and it was including all this information. Here's everything you can read. Here's several scripts. So it was a lot. It was a lot of prep that weekend. And then I went in Monday. And the first week, we all were given assignments to talk for a couple of hours. There's 2 people a day about if given free reign, like what would you personally do with season 4?
Oh,
And I got to go last because I was added to the room last, even though there was other new people as well. It wasn't just me, but I was like that one who was hired, obviously, right before they started. Um, so I got to listen to everybody else's pitches and ideas and got to really take in what the flow of the room was and like how everyone kind of seemed to work, who talked a lot, who didn't, who was more, precise with their speaking. And that was really great. I mean, that was my first, in my opinion, like official network writers room. So it was a lot of just learning how the job actually works. And it was a really perfect room to do that in. The people are all lovely. I'm friends with every single one of them to this day. I was just texting with Sarah Thompson.
Oh,
Um,
I met
so
her. Yeah.
does that answer most of your question? I think it's
Oh yeah, that's really
okay.
yeah. Sarah, I had her on for
I know.
a
I
couple.
watched. I
Yeah.
looked at hers. Hers was good. I
I
heard
love
good
it.
answers.
Do you remember some of the like other ideas people threw out for season four, or what was or yours for season
Do
four?
actually. I have a pretty good memory for this kind of stuff. I know Maya Goldsmith pitched that there would be a lockdown at a courthouse,
Oh
and that
shit.
maybe that would be our flash forward, like a shooter in a courthouse.
Oh,
And you could
missed
like
it.
jump around different spaces in that. And then there was a pitch on that. I think I even added to that that like if there, and then we had someone had come up with the law office of CNG, but they're like, what if there was a shooting or a cap or a hostage situation at CNG, and that's murder night? And I pitched off of that. Okay, so what if there's a hostage situation that seems like it's happening, but then we realize through our flash forwards that it's a fake one that our characters are doing to like empty out the office to do something
Oh shit.
secretive.
Yeah.
But I said, and then as their plan is in action on murder night, what if they're pretending there's a hostage situation, but then a real one actually starts
Oh
happening?
shit.
I don't know. So again, we're throwing crazy ideas out there. I believe Daniel Robinson, I can't remember if this is season 4 or 5, but pitched maybe Bonnie was in the snow frantically searching for something in a
Oh,
flash forward, and it turns out to be her tooth or a
oh,
tooth.
oh shit.
Um, what else? What else? A lot of season 4 pitches I do remember were focused on Annalise rehabilitating herself.
Mm.
How is she going to fix all the damage done in season 3? She's lost Wes now. She was like fired for drinking. I mean, there's all these things going on that it was like
Slap.
this was all
Yeah.
about rehabilitating her soul as well as like her career and self. So there were a lot of pitches in that direction.
Oh
I
my
think
god,
that's all I remember.
that's crazy. Damn. I remember when I had Daniel on, he was the first writer I had on, and he was telling me some of the pitches, and I think it was for season six, and he said Asher was gonna get like a girlfriend, like a new character girlfriend, and she was gonna be like a murderer or obsessed
Yeah.
with what the characters were doing or something, and you'd find out,
Yeah.
oh shit.
I think Daniel, I don't remember if it was season 4 or 5 or 6, or in one of these early days, the beginning of the season, pitched that there was a serial killer who messaged our group as a fan of their work.
Oh
Because even though they hadn't killed anybody purposely, this person didn't know that. And so it was like a twisted, like he wanted to become one of them. And I don't know, I loved it, but we never did it, obviously. But there are ideas like that. We used to have, and this is like, I think exists in every writer's room that I've been in, at least, where there's the show and everybody pitches on the show. And then there's a fake version of the show where all of like the funny, silly, that we would never do this pitches go. And inevitably, the fake show becomes so much more fun to write than the
Oh
real show
no.
because it's just so silly. And ours, at least what I remember, it was titled "How Do You Get Away with Murder?" And it was Annalise with like a cowboy hat.
Oh my howdy.
And it was just like silly. I mean, I think this, I was not in the room for this, but it was one of my favorite running. This is pre my existence in that room. But there was a joke that Nia early on, because you had never seen her on screen, was not Nate's wife, but actually his cat.
Oh.
So every time they would joke that Nate is like, Nia's upstairs. Like he really meant like my cat's upstairs.
Nia's in the hospital again.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my
So
god.
I mean, those are just when you have long hours and you need to keep yourself entertained. But yeah, things can get crazy.
Oh my. Season four is probably behind. Like I would say season one and then season four is my favorite.
Mm.
Just so I'm like loving all the season four tea right now.
Or I wish I could tell you, I wish I could remember when we came up with the idea for the crossover,
Oh, I
but
have
I do
that on
know
my
for a fact that it was
oh
us and not Scandal. We came up with it
period.
because I think it was something about getting to the Supreme Court. We knew that, but then it was like, how? And it's probably Sarah Thompson or Joe Fazio who said, what if we
Oh,
went Olivia Pope. And the question I think was never going to be crossover. I think initially our thought was let's just bring her on as a special guest. And then I think they like Joe and Pete started talking and maybe Maya and like put their heads together of like, what if this is bigger than that? But yeah, that was so fun. Writing for Olivia Pope. Oh my
oh,
God.
iconic.
That was
Oh my
so
God.
cool.
Yeah, I had that on my list. I was just really curious how if like who came up or yeah, the idea for the
I'm gonna give
crossover.
credit to Sarah, but
Period.
I would also put Joe and Maya in that pod because those three, it
Oh,
probably was one of them.
damn. Just the promos and everything iconic. Just oh my god.
Iconic.
The whole lineup was iconic. But oh my god. Like TGIT, come on, everyone was hashtag TGIT and little popcorn emojis and the wine and the good day. Right. Oh man. Yeah, but I love season 4 with Isaac and the mystery, the elevator, the Kaplan and Gold, Tegan, and just yeah, and the crossover and yeah, it's top tier shit right there. Oh my
I can tell you
god.
in that season, 410, uh, everything we did was for nothing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The monologue Annalise, basically the scene Annalise and Bonnie have, the really intense one where Annalise says, like, you think God loves me, he's brutalized me.
Oh,
I saw my husband's blood on the living room floor, and I've got these kids in my life having babies in elevators. Da, da, da. She has all these things she says. That was the first time I experienced the Viola. That monologue was not at all what it was. It was my first time on set, first time working with her. And she was like waving it. She's like, this is not good.
oh.
But I'm not going to say this. And she was right. Again, she was right. She's like, I'm not going to complain about these things when like Bonnie has suffered so much and I've suffered so much. Like, this doesn't matter. I was like, okay, okay, okay. So rewrote it for her. She was much happier. It was much better. Even for Bonnie, I think I rewrote some of Bonnie's stuff for Liza, who is incredible, by the way.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, that was the first, but season 4, yeah, season 4 was special.
Yes. Especially after what they did with season with like how big season 3 was, like the shift with after Wes
Oh my God, yeah.
and Jorge. Jesus Christ. Oh man, where are we? Did you have like a favorite mystery or favorite character to write for?
Ooh, Michaela.
Like, oh shit,
1000% Michaela. And when Annalise, always Annalise. But well,
of
Annalise
course.
when I was on set, because that was always a thrill of like, I have to do the 10 minutes, like 10 minutes to do this. Like I'm the thrill seeker in me, I guess. But I but I loved Michaela because her voice was so specific. It was like
Mm,
speaks really quickly, but Asia's so brilliant that she's so clear with how she enunciates. So like every word gets out perfectly. And I can always, I think that's part of it. When I was writing her, I can always hear Asia's voice so, so, so clearly saying the words. And then when I'd get on set, and this was the best part, she would say them exactly how I imagined she would say them. So it was like easy to
yes.
predict how she was going to come at it. And like, it was a joy. It was a joy. It was so much fun to do that because I knew she would kill it every time.
I really want to jump to season 5 with the Niles Harrington client
Okay.
and
Yeah.
how that came about and like can you like confirm again it was for me? Like
Oh, 1000% it was for you. We talked
period.
about it specifically, it was for you.
Oh
I
shit.
think it was Pete's idea that that we should do that. But I feel like it came from either myself or maybe Mike Russo or somebody who's a little bit more on Twitter. I think we had posted some promo or something. Maybe he posted pictures. I don't remember what it was. You had seen something that was posted and basically solved a mystery from whatever it was. And you had tweeted about it. And I think either I or Mike was like, we have a problem. Someone already knows the answer to this. And Pete was like, what? I was like, it's Niles. He goes, oh my God, Niles. And we started talking about who you were, how you're such a big fan. And then he goes, we have to do something for him at some point. What should we do? What should we do? And I think he was like, let's name a character after him.
Oh shit.
And there was just, I think there was a question of just like which character and when. And I think this final season, it was like, we have to do it.
Shit, I
Not
wonder
final
what
season five.
what did I saw of? I feel like I threw every theory out there. Oh shit.
I I
Hmm.
don't know if this was the same time, but it was like Pete had posted a picture of either the board in the room or something, and I think he tried to white stuff out,
Oh
but you
yeah,
weren't
and I
able to
hide.
see through it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Which yeah, it was like not anyone's fault, but it was just
Oops.
like I don't remember if that was it, but we talked about you several times in the room because it was just like, is Niles gonna figure this out? Is Niles gonna think like it's because I think a lot of it was like you're kind of our ideal viewer, like someone who dissects the show, they watch it, they love it, they respond to it. So I think it's easy to be like, will this fan of the show be satisfied by this? Will this fan of the show figure this out really quickly? Will this, it's a good barometer for things. So yes,
You're
100%.
welcome.
That
Oh,
character was named after you.
okay.
You will live in How to Get Away with Murder history.
I I like watching that episode because they say the client's name more than usual, like because like they
Yeah.
never say other clients' name, like, and I like how Annalise and Tegan were like, oh Niles, I hate Niles, or like you hate Niles more than I do, or I'm like, oh my God, I can't take this to heart, or like yeah, like because the clients of yeah, like
You
the
should make
whole
that like your
belt thing.
ringtone or something.
I put like a whole clip together of every time they said it. Like,
Yes.
oh God. Hell yeah. That's so cool. I knew you confirmed it for in like a DM, but I just wanted to
No, let's make
mess
it
around.
official.
Okay.
Everyone needs to know
Yeah.
that character is named after you.
Fair, yeah. I do remember when they posted the whiteboard and I like put the contrast way up and
That's it.
turned
Contrast. Yes,
and
yes.
like messed with the settings and you could see the writing. It was for season
Yeah.
6, like I think, or season 5, I think. Yeah, one of them. Oops. Oh, okay, and then season 5, with the snow and Miller being the body,
Hmm.
and I think Daniel or Sarah confirmed like that was like the plan from the beginning, like from the start, like Miller being.
Yeah, yes, I think if memory serves, yeah, he was always going to die, and we knew, I believe, that Nate was going to be the one to do it. But then it shifted a little bit because I had said in the room, I don't know that Nate's like a killer. Like this is a guy who's always been like the moral compass of the show, and I'm like, maybe we can get him right to that edge.
Mm,
And then to protect him, if we develop a good enough bond between him and Bonnie, like Bonnie seems to be like the protector of this group in a lot of ways. And like, what if she finished the job? I said, especially because the feeling of betrayal she might have from learning about what Miller may or may not have done, would be enough to get her there. And the tragedy of that, like falling in love with someone, feeling betrayed. So that was the only shift. But yeah, it was always Miller from the get go. Whether or not he was innocent, I think was definitely up for grabs for a long time.
mhm.
Um, but yeah,
Mm. And then, like, was that normally how like the main mysteries would go each season, like, or like how far in advance would like with stuff like like season 4, like the elevator, like the baby, was that always like the main thing, or
um, no, I
oh
think
shit,
because I remember that
because that
we
would
were going
be
to either
yeah.
have the CNG stuff with, oh my God, why can't I think of his name? The
Oh,
character being shot.
Simon.
Simon. God, I should remember that for help. It's like PTSD. Um, we that was a big thing, and then the Laurel thing was set. There's two separate things, right? And I think I remember Pete being like, "We should get rid of the Laurel thing. It's one too many things happening at once. It's too much of a coincidence." And I mean, I'm not trying to give myself a ton of credit, but I remember speaking out and being like, "But I think one thing leads to another thing because Laurel is there for that, and then has to go." It was like it feels like just a bad series of events.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked that. I was like, so let's do that. So there are things like that that like weren't 100% set in stone and kept shifting. But I will tell you, as far as like probably more season 5 and 6, you can see it. There is not a solid of like a this is 100% what's going to happen. Like Miller, like we was like Miller's definitely did something bad, and that's why it's okay that he's dead. And then later it's like, well, isn't it better if he's innocent? And then it's like, well, no, he
Uh,
really did. So it's like I kept waffling.
yeah.
Or I think even the final season, like with you might know his name better than I. The guy she's dating. I wrote that scene. Why can't I remember it?
Oh,
Goes on a
Robert.
date. Robert. Oh my god, it's my
Yeah.
dad's name too.
Really?
Yeah. But she goes out with Robert, and that question of like, is he bad? Is he good? What is his purpose really? Like
hmm
things like that were never really ironed out, which I think you can kind of see in the show at times when like Robert just kind of fades away to the
Yeah.
distance. Well, um,
I
and I
kind of
think a
like,
lot of people
yeah.
thought, he was evil, he's a plant, he's going to do something, and probably we should have done that with him because
Eh,
she just rejects him. Yeah.
I kind of like a couple of their scenes. Like it
Oh
showed
no,
like
I liked his
her trying.
inclusion. I wish
Yeah.
like the payoff of him
And the actors are
was
really
a
good
little
too.
bit
Yeah.
stronger.
Yeah. Like it was like kind of like Annalise, like that little bit of normal, like trying to get back out
Yes,
there, like
yes.
just dancing in the kitchen or dinner, like just some normal guy. Yeah. I liked it, but yeah, you could see some little stuff in there. Yeah. Like, yeah, I thought he was going to be bad too, that bastard. I was wondering if you could talk about like the shift in the show from like the case of the weeks, like the like not like the like the cases that were like kind of not realistic, like but they're still fun, like to like the real world problem, like the real world problems and stuff with like Nate, like with Senior and like those cases, and like if you could talk about the shift kind of like the show did,
The shift in what way?
like from going from case of the weeks that are not really like realistic or in a certain way to like um
Do you mean more like how we came up with it, or what was it like doing something really like light or something in versus something dark? I mean,
yeah, like going from light to like real world case like sort of stuff, like with people of color and the prison systems
yeah,
and
I think that's an interesting question. I think the experience of it, like the lighter cases on some level are always a little easier to write because, for instance, I mean, even I Hate the World, like that episode, I would say was very, very easy to write. It just was like not super heavy. The things it dealt with were important, but not, life or death. And I think when you have something like that, you don't feel the pressure of like, I want to handle this so carefully to make sure that you're having a
yeah, that's
nuanced, interesting, kind of innovative conversation about a topic. I mean, I think you try to do that a little bit, even with the fun stuff, but there's just not that same
yeah.
pressure. Whereas, like with Nate's dad, and something about that is a lot about, okay, so for instance, the episode Laura Innes directed, that was all about solitary confinement and the like, 60 seconds of silence,
Oh shit.
like that kind of thing requires a lot more research, a lot more nuance, a lot more like really trying to dig in and understand how not only what is this experience actually like for the prisoner, for the prison guard, for people who uphold it, but also how do you then express that to the audience in a way that they can internalize and feel and make sure they like connect with. So I think those episodes just feel a little bit more, I don't say like it's more work, but it is like it's just more care that is
hmm
required. At least from my point of view. I mean, that's what I would want for something. If you have a serious topic, take it seriously. But I enjoyed working on both. I mean, I think both at Murder and in other jobs, I have worked in light and darker stuff and heavier, more important, I guess, stuff. Yeah, it's not like a difficult transition in the room to do because you spend all of your energy as a writer on a room focused on the episode in front of you. And even if it's not your episode, I'm working on Daniel's episode with him. Like you put all your energy toward that. So if it's a light episode, that becomes the job. If the next episode deals more with Nate's dad or whatever, then you kind of just change gears in your head and move more toward that stuff. Um, I guess, yeah, I would just say it's more about the kind of like time and energy you're putting into both and making sure the result is what you need it to be.
That scene when she's standing in the tape box. Oh my
Oh, yeah.
god,
So
that
good.
mm. And Nate's Glenn Truman is so good too. Oh my god.
Yeah, he's terrific. Wow, what a performance.
Was there any cases that stuck out as your favorites, or like before
Hmm.
you were on the show, or your three
Ooh,
seasons?
before I was on the show, 100%. I think the Erica Harrison episode about restorative justice
Mm,
is my favorite
with the mom
episode.
and
Yeah.
the
I think that was my favorite
yeah.
episode of the show in terms of the legal stuff, what they were dealing with. It just was so powerful. It was such a different take on the legal system. To me, was the only episode to really, I don't know, kind of have a serious emotional critique about the legal system without, while also offering us an alternative, which I think to me is very powerful. And any others?
I
No, but
really
I'll tell you an episode like that I absolutely just, there's a maybe a 12-minute segment of episode 209.
oh period the whole yeah okay yeah
When the music starts and it's just like it follows her walking and like goes around in circles, and like that to me is the height of the show. Like I think that was like my favorite sequence they've ever done.
I love how they did that in season 6 too with with the gun with after she fights with Nate
So
yeah.
full disclosure, it was my idea to do that again
Ah!
because I loved it so much in 209. I was like, we have to do this again.
Yeah, with the voice,
Full
all the
disclosure,
yeah.
Viola didn't love it as much the second time because she
Oh,
didn't think it was as motivated, and she's right.
but
But it looks great.
yeah, it's iconic.
So she's right, and I was right.
Period.
But mostly she was right.
I love the case in season 3 with Connor with Irene Crawley, and she was getting abused by her husband for like 30 years or something, and
Yeah.
she finally saved herself, and that
That
case
is
really
another,
stick.
that's another like all timer, I think is
Yeah,
just so good.
and Jack is really in that scene with like sticking up to the board with the guy. Yeah,
Yes.
Jesus Christ. Oof. And then I think we could jump to the final season now and find out why you guys wanted to kill Bonnie off. No, I'm joking.
What have other people said about this? Has anyone else answered this question?
No, no, I don't think so. You're the
Niles,
first. I wanted to save it for you.
I I was the most staunch Bonnie defender and protector
Here,
you could
okay.
ever imagine in the world.
Uh,
Um,
thank you.
if I had my druthers, what would have happened is Bonnie survives
Period.
and moves to Oregon, because Frank does not survive.
Mm,
And the last thing you see of Bonnie is her walking in the woods very happily by herself with a dog trailing her. And the dog runs ahead. She goes, "Hold on, Frank, don't go too far." And she keeps going. End of Bonnie's life. She's happy, she's whole, and she is safe, is what I want for Bonnie. So that's my head canon. But in reality, I
uh,
will tell you, I would say out of what, 10 writers? I don't remember how many were, like 8 writers, 10 writers, half of us were very vocal about Bonnie surviving the series because we knew it was a real possibility that she was not. Um, but it just didn't turn out that way.
okay, we're gonna stick with your. Okay. Oh, that would. Oh, I know she's
I
like
know. And I
killed
think even
Rebecca.
this was like at a lunch when like Sarah and Tess and I were talking about that alternate ending. Because Tess even was like, well, what if we gave Bonnie a kid? And what if the kid's name's Frank? I was like, I love that too. I just want Bonnie to be happy.
A little dog. Yeah. What kind of dog would it be?
I feel like it has to be Frank like. So probably maybe a mutt, but a little scrappy, but big enough that it could protect her too. Like you
Yeah,
want
yeah,
to
yeah.
feel like Bonnie is safe. Um,
Yeah, because she talks
maybe
with.
like
Oh,
a pit bull mix with something else,
yeah.
like a dog that other people are scared of. Bonnie's like, no, I see your heart. I love you.
And it has like little black boots on, like for the
Yeah,
gloves, Like, no, I
leather
don't know.
jacket. Yeah, yeah.
Oh shoot. Oh yeah, because when she's in the hotel room with Frank, they're talking about hikes and stuff, and Frank's like, "I can't picture you on a hike," and Bonnie's like, "That's the point." And
Yes.
okay, I love you even more.
You
Okay,
get it. See, you
girl.
get exactly why we wanted that because it was
I
already there.
yeah, damn it, I
And we
can't believe.
also felt like Frank had mentioned Oregon or something a couple times. It was like somebody should get there. Somebody should get to safety.
Yeah, I think in season 5 or 4 or something they bring it up again, or
Yes,
in 6 in the final season I think they bring. Yeah, maybe. Damn it, I'm
I
gonna
know.
move.
I know. It's the one thing about the show that I mean, there's nothing I could have done. It's not ultimately my decision, but like I fought so hard
Uh,
for her to live.
and okay, I'm gonna forget you. Damn. And what was it like going in, like coming back from the break and finding out that it was going to be the final season? And what was like the first like preparations for like who killed Annalise and like
Mm.
the funeral and how
I
that
will
was.
remember it took a few, possibly even a couple of months into the final season before they officially told us. Because I think it was a
Uh,
conversation they kept having with Pete back and forth. Maybe it'll, because I believe Viola was under contract for 7 years. And that question was like, well, if you have one of the number one actors on the planet, shouldn't you use all 7 years?
mm,
Was Pete's argument. And I think we all agreed. And so, but again, it was like the back and forth, like, well, maybe, and talk to Viola, and eventually Pete started saying, just start thinking, just in case they want to end it now. Like, we'll know, we can start planning. And so we already were talking about that. And a lot of the talk was
mm,
about initially, before it turned into Who Killed Annalise, it was a lot of talk about, are any of the kids going to prison? Is anyone actually going to get away with this?
mm,
That's the whole point of the show. And like, is the answer to how to get away with murder? Like, you don't. And so we all started imagining different scenarios in that case, which was a lot of fun. And in my scenarios, a lot of them were like, Annalise sends every single one of those kids to prison. Like, there's no
yeah.
fault about it.
Uh,
And I believe even until episode like 613 and 614, because Michaela and Connor are doing a lot of maneuvering against Annalise. I think we still were open to them going to prison at that point. So that
both
was
of them.
never both of them.
Oh,
Because, well, at least in my brain, and this is what I remember, and maybe it's just because it's what I wanted. I do know there's a lot of talks about that because to me it made the most sense. And Viola, by the way, pushed this all 3 years I was with her, that like Annalise likes these kids, but ultimately doesn't love them.
mm-hmm.
And like they really are only in her orbit because they have screwed up with her life. And like she's protecting them kind of to protect herself a little bit. So Viola, I think, always had the actor point of view of like this motive should be the most selfish motive. That's what actors to me kind of believe. It has to be about me. And I agree with that, especially for someone like Annalise, who's been all about protecting others most of her life, is now like, I need to put myself first. And to me, that might mean cut the kids loose. Like they actually committed crimes. You did not. They've actually caused you pain. Like you did not. So in a show like this, it also makes sense to me that you kind of have that dark ending of like she gets away with it, but nobody else does. There was also, by the way, a discussion of does Annalise kill anybody this final season?
Oh no.
Be the murderer. But then a question of who would she kill? Why would she kill them? It's like all these things have to be kind of laid out and discussed. And ultimately, I think it was probably Maisha or Maya or Pete who was like, Annalise maybe is the one who we think is dead. And maybe that's
Mm.
the twist is that she's really not.
Oh shit.
I know every possibility really, I think, was thought through. Because, and I remember we all talked about this beginning of that year of like, if this is our final season, Game of Thrones had just ended. So a lot of us were feeling pretty burned by that. And it was like, and I think you came up because it was the idea of like, we have people who have given hours and hours and hours of their life to us. It's not a small thing. Time is the most precious resource you and I and anyone has on this planet. It's the one thing you can never get back. So to give us hours of your existence and us not to deliver on a finale, like that to me is criminal from like an artist point of view. So I do think we really were like trying as hard as we can, like, what's the best way to tell and end the story?
Yeah, you guys did it good though. If
Thank
my
you.
reaction, oh man, oh man, oh man, and what would that would probably be like the hardest challenge, right? Coming up with this final episode, or would like the middle, or probably, or
I think maybe the hardest challenge, honestly, for the final season was basically coming up with the big bad.
hmm,
Like the governor. Okay, so here's an example. Uh, I know Daniel and I worked on 612, and a lot of the kind of political machinations of what the governor was going to do to Annalise, we had found that in reality, a governor like can't recommend or has a limited power when it comes to trying to get someone at the state level like the death penalty.
hmm,
Or no, I'm sorry, it's the opposite. That at the federal level, far, far, far fewer people are executed on death row than at the state level. So
hmm,
we thought, would it be smart if our villain is the governor ultimately, that she would knowingly tank a federal case so that it gets kicked back down to state so that she has control over it and puts Annalise on death row. That was like our big thing toward the end. And I think the reality was like, it was like, well, state feels smaller than federal. Federal feels big. The government feels big. So it was like flipping, like trying to figure out that piece of it took weeks.
oh,
Because to us, as the writers of that episode, it just felt clearer that our villain of this series is the governor at this point. Wouldn't it be better that she has her hands more involved with Annalise's death? That was our
hmm,
logic, but Pete did not feel that way. So it ended up being the federal government doing this to her, which to us made it even more difficult to make sure the audience felt like the governor was behind it
oh,
because we have
yeah,
these FBI agents. It was just like clarity. That was always the hardest thing for me, I think, was like trying to make everything super clear, realistic, and entertaining at the same time, particularly when you're dealing with like people who are manipulating legal stuff, and trying to do with things.
God damn. I'll leave that to you. Yeah. Oh my God, I would need a whole wall full of that. I wanted to get your opinion, or what did you think about the Frank being Sam's incest baby? Like, who came up, or what was that like thrown in, or not thrown in, because it goes back to season one, kind of with.
Yeah. Who came up with it? I don't remember. Um, how do I feel about it? I don't mind things like that. I think
Yeah,
for me, where it kind of bumps a little is like, how does this change anything
yeah,
for Frank? And also, I don't know. I found some of the backstory of it a little convoluted, like hard to follow. But I think the emotional thing is really what I care about. Is like, why would this emotionally impact someone so many years later to make it a present story? I think was not something I felt fully on board with. It was just kind of like, I get how this is dramatic for the audience, and I
yeah,
get how it may be surprising to Frank, but I don't know that it would motivate him to do anything.
yeah. I see where.
I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Um, I didn't really like it when it was when the when it aired. I think I was like again like tweeting against it, not like me, not in a mean way, but
Yeah.
I think it's okay. I think it's okay now, but I really don't think about it when I
I'll be
rewatch,
curious to see what your boyfriend thinks
or
when you guys get there.
I'm recording it. I'll send it to you. I'll have the phone set up. Yeah, I feel like I don't really like, or it's not really in my head when I rewatch it, or like, yeah, like there's by
I
or
also
yeah,
think it
like
makes their relationship weirder, or where it's just like Sam is just awful. Like you're just There's
Yeah, and
nothing
he's
redeeming about Sam in that,
no
if that's the reality, because it's like you deny your son the reality of who he actually is for his whole life, but then you also manipulate him to kill people for you.
his
So
yeah, his
bad.
like half siblings and stuff and like
Yeah.
Lila's babies kind like and
Pretty fucked
then
up. Sam's the
Gabriel
worst.
and Jesus.
Sam's the worst.
And oh, we have 7 minutes left. Oh no.
Oh my God.
Um, yeah, and then we could kind of like touch maybe like the other events of the series finale. Connor going to jail and the shootout and um Ophelia, like all the like the
Are
last
you
10
curious, like the development of those ideas, like how we came up with that stuff, or like why the reasoning behind some of it?
or yeah, both like yeah, like, or yeah, like Connor and
I think
finally being the one and
Connor going to jail, I think, was about like somebody has to go to prison. The show is called How to Go with Murder. It's all about avoiding, criminal prosecution. Like it just has to. Someone's got to. And Annalise, is always going to be the smartest person and outsmarting everyone. So she's not going to go to jail. Also, she's already been to prison. Um, but I think Connor, it was a lot of versus Connor versus Michaela, which of the two should go. And I think we thought it was more interesting if Connor went because he has Oliver.
mm,
And so it was like, what is it like for someone outside of prison? And that I will say probably started more with a broader discussion about like, can the final season, can Connor be in prison for a lot of it? And like
oh
we like
shit.
really explore the effects of prison on relationships. But that stuff always gets changed and everything as time dwindles down to shooting and all that stuff. And with space. But I think it was just about needing someone, and that felt like the most emotionally interesting person. And also, we thought there was an aspect to Connor that ultimately might fall on the sword. That like he's kind of the one who has a guilty conscience about everything they've done and suffers internally so much for it. What if he just decided like I really should just pay the price for what we've done and do the right
Get
thing?
it over with. Like, oh,
Yeah, but
uh,
and what else did you ask about Ophelia? I mean, that was a lot about we're doing this big time thing. You kind of want to show loss, and how life really just keeps evolving and changing and people lose people. And that was part of Annalise's journey. Um, and just also rounding out the story, I think especially if we were gonna age Annalise up and show the end of her life, it was like, yeah, her mom is not gonna be around for everything. And now yeah, I think that was just important to show more bigger context of Annalise's life. And the shootout,
oh
um,
shit.
I think that was an idea that probably Pete came up with, but it was just something you want big and dramatic and explosive in the finale, especially a series finale. And I think it was also a good way to get rid of Bonnie and Frank at the same time.
Oh
I
my
know. I
god.
know.
Oh god.
But as we recall, Bonnie dodged all the bullets and
Yeah,
moved to Oregon. So
Matrix style. Yeah, I
yeah,
remember
she's fine
Neil.
now. She's good. Bonnie spinoff
Oh,
coming soon.
yeah, period. Oh my god. I
I
just
would actually watch a show about a Bonnie spinoff if she's leading like a quiet life somewhere
she has like a
and
little
gets caught
firm or
up in crime
something.
again. And like,
Oh,
yeah, she's fine.
you can write that and I'll write the Tegan one and then we'll
Yeah.
cross over
Perfect.
our season
Yeah.
fours on you.
My God. Historic.
Man, that scene where Viola is or Viola and holding Bonnie's oh Jesus Christ, I
I
cannot
know.
even do that. uh that's so
Brutal.
and what was probably my final question because we're running out of time. What would be like your biggest takeaway from working on the show and your favorite memory?
Oh God. Favorite memory. I mean, favorite memory is hard because so much of my time is with the writers and like when we would get to do our like writer retreats at the end of the season, like that's kind of my favorite memories.
Mhm.
But I think just being on set, honestly, like I said, that episode of 604 is probably that one, or there's 406. I believe she's in therapy, and I believe Cherie Nolan directed that episode, who's one of my favorite people on the planet. That was a really
Mm.
incredible experience. But there's a therapy scene in which Viola talks about or Viola, Annalise talks about what it was like to lose the baby and come home from the hospital. And I wrote that. And it was the first time that like most of every word that I wrote was there. It didn't get
Uh,
changed. And I was so proud. But it was also just a beautiful moment from Viola. So that's probably my favorite. But my big takeaway from that show, I think because we had to make it so quickly, like in terms of the scheduling was really fast, so writing was really fast. I think it's just learning like on a machine that big with that many people. I just think being really clear about like making decisions and sticking by them, I think is really
mm,
important in this industry. And Viola in particular, I think taught me that in terms of like really understand what you want the story about your character to be. Is it like ultimately How to Get Away with Murder is a big critique of the legal system in the United States. It's a thriller, it's a murder thing, but ultimately it's about a woman who's struggling in her life, and it's with alcohol, with loss, with pain, and that's it. Like that's the show. And so I think realizing that these big fancy stories that I like to tell and you like to tell and you like to watch and I like to watch, like if you can't dwindle it down to like an emotional core, I think it's going to be harder for that show to work. And I think
mm,
we had that. And so the show really works despite all the craziness around it. I mean, crazy things happen on that show, but you have the emotional
mm,
core of Annalise. And I think she brings you along every step of the way. So that's something I feel like I'll take away from it. Is just like really understanding that a story begins with making people feel something.
sure. Oh, well said. Well said.
Thank you.
Oh, oh man. 1 minute left. Well, yeah. I'm gonna end the recording and then I was gonna ask you one more thing, maybe,
Sure. Yeah,
or
yeah.
like, but yeah, thank you for coming on and thank you for being
Thank
a
you for
part
having
of
me. And
my
thank you. I'm so
favorite
sorry it's taken us
show.
so long to actually get it happening. I'm glad we did.
I like always get like people to like say yes, but then it's like not. I know you got everyone's busy like more than me, but like I was like yes, I'll come, and then it's like 6 months later, or you're
Yeah.
like don't forget about me, like no, but it's fun when I finally get someone on and yeah, find out all the secrets and stuff. So thank you for
Well, it's been a lot of fun. I had a great time.
thank you.